Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Learning Love podcast. I'm Dr. Mark A. Hicks, author of the book Learning Love. Love is a learned skill set, and I am glad you are here today as we take some time learning love. Love is the answer. Now all we have to do is explore all the questions. And today's question is, how do we deal with the past? What do we do when we have a train wreck of a past? When we've had dysfunctional relationships, when we've been through a divorce, when we've had terrible breakups, when a friend has betrayed us. I could go on and on. A lot of bad things can happen in life. It's not all bad. Don't want to be pessimistic here. Life has its good elements. We know that, but we have our hardships. There are bad things that happen along the way, and there are people that have hurt us along the way. And so, how do we deal with the past in order to go forward into happy, healthy, thriving relationships in every area of life? That's our goal. We want to get to those happy, healthy, thriving relationships at home, at work, everywhere in life. That's what leads to the life we want and need and deserve. And the past can keep us in a dark place that keeps us from having that life that we deserve. And so, how do we overcome the past? How do we deal with that? Well, the first thing is, let's just admit that it does have an effect. There's a lot of people in the world that like to just forget about it, to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, grit their teeth, and move forward as if nothing happened. Just forget it. Move on. Pretend like it's okay. Everybody asks how you are, and you say fine. And you try to mean it as best you can. Let's admit that the past has affected us and be specific. It may not have to be something as big as the things I named. Maybe you haven't been through a divorce. Maybe you haven't come from a dysfunctional family. Maybe you weren't betrayed by a friend, but maybe it was smaller things, things that really affected you that may be hard to talk about because everyone else might dismiss it, but it meant something to you. There's a story that a professor of mine told one time that I've always remembered, and I write about it in my book, actually, Learning Love. I mention it in my book because it's a powerful story about how the past affects our present and our future if we let it. This is a story of a young man, college age, and he developed a great fascination with a young lady in his class, which young college guys tend to do. She was beautiful, she was smart, she was athletic, she was everything. And he so wanted to ask her out. The problem was she was way out of his league. Now, he was smart, made really good grades, but that was kind of the only thing he had going for him. He wasn't great looking. He certainly was not athletic. He didn't have a dynamic personality. He just was a smart, nice guy. That's what he had. And he knew that if he asked her out, he would probably get shot down. And so he tried to just put it out of his mind, but he couldn't. He was so infatuated with her, he couldn't get her off of his mind. And to make it worse, every now and then, he would be walking across campus, walking down the street, be in a restaurant, be somewhere, and he would see a couple. And the guy was not great looking, even though the girl was beautiful. He would see that guy that somehow got the date with the beautiful girl, and he thought, maybe that could be me. Maybe I could do that. And so it just kept nagging at him that he had to try. He couldn't go on. He had to know. Even if she said no, he had to know that he tried. And then maybe, if she rejected him, maybe then he could at least move on. Maybe then he could get it off his mind. And so he mustered up all his courage and he asked her out on a date. And she said no. But that wasn't the problem. He expected that. He was hoping that she would say yes, but he expected that she would say no. That wasn't the problem. The problem was before she said no, just for a second, a brief second, she laughed. It was just a chuckle. She just blurted out a small chuckle and then stifled it quickly. And then politely went on to turn him down. But the damage was done. He had expected her to say no. He was prepared for her to say no. He was not prepared to be laughed at. He was humiliated. It was embarrassing. He kicked himself for even thinking that he could get a date with her. He kicked himself for even asking her for a date. He felt so humiliated, he just wanted to crawl into the ground. And in that moment of embarrassment and humiliation and shame and self doubt, he made himself this promise: I will never let someone hurt me like this again. Now, he didn't fully realize it at the time, but that young man saying that promise to himself in the midst of his humiliation and embarrassment, that resonated in his soul. It became a core element of his personality. From that day on, he kept people at arm's length. He was still a nice guy. He still interacted with people. He still had friends. He went on to date, but he always kept people shut out. He was always on the defensive with his emotions. He would never let anyone in. Fast forward a couple of decades, he got married. He had a couple of kids. They were getting to be in the teenage years. They were coming up on their 25th wedding anniversary. And his wife came to him and said, we are going to go to counseling or I am going to leave you. He didn't want to lose her. He knew things were bad, but he didn't know they were that bad. So he agreed to go to counseling. And as they discussed, as they talked, the wife talked a lot about how lonely she felt in their relationship. He had always been a great provider, had a great job, made a lot of money. He had always worked around the house. He was a good father, showed up at all the ball games and the plays and all the things the kids had done over the years. He had been a good person and was a nice guy and was well thought of in the community, but he was always separated from her and the kids. He would never let them in. And she said, I'm tired of feeling lonely in my relationship. As they discussed, they eventually understood that it all went back to that promise that young man had made in that moment of humiliation, promising himself he would never let anyone hurt him again. And without meaning to, he had hurt his kids, his wife, he had harmed his marriage to the point that they were on the brink of divorce. Not because he didn't love her, not because he didn't care, but because he was too scared to let anyone in. The past affects us. And it might not be something dramatic like a divorce or a dysfunctional family in your childhood. It might be that one thing that happened, that one story you don't tell, that moment where you promised you wouldn't let anyone hurt you anymore. And what we do in an effort to protect ourselves is we put up walls thinking that we are keeping people from hurting us, but what we are actually doing is building our own prison of loneliness, casting ourselves into a lonely state and putting people who love us outside those walls where they can never really connect with us. It's a sad place to be. And it's all because we don't always deal well with the past. We don't always deal with the things that have happened in our past. So, what we need to understand is that while these events are important, while the things that happen, big and small, that have happened in our life, and I should rephrase that, it's not small to us. Anything that affects you is a big deal. But in the scheme of things, it may be some small act, like the story I just told, one moment in time that is relatively small, but it made an impact on him. It's all big to us when it happens to us. And all these events are things that happen and they are important, but it is actually not those events that affect us. It's not those events that determine our present and our future. It is our reaction to them. And that's an important distinction. The event itself does not determine what happened. It's our reaction to it that makes the difference. When we react with defensiveness, when we react by putting up those walls, that is our choice. Now, it seems like a logical one. It seems like something that would be reasonable to try to protect ourselves in the future, but that doesn't actually work. It just casts us into loneliness and bars the people that could be loving us, connecting with us, and building a happy, healthy life together. We're keeping them out. But it makes logical sense. We seem like we're protecting ourselves. And so While we react that way in a logical way, it is our reaction that is causing our present and our future. It is our reaction to it. That event didn't change anything. It's how we choose to react to it. Let's imagine that same scenario with someone that had a little more confidence. Maybe it's the exact same scenario. A smart guy, nice guy, but not very good looking, not very athletic, you know, not really sociably on game. And so he asks this girl out and she chuckles and then turns him down and he's disappointed. But maybe somebody with just a little more confidence could have said, you know what? That's her choice. I could have been really nice to her. That's unfortunate. Somebody that had a little more confidence could say, that was really disappointing. I hate it worked out like that, but, bad things happen. And be able to react differently to the same exact action. There are people that have been divorced that go on to have very healthy, happy second marriages. And there are people that never trust again. And even if they get married again, it's tumultuous because they're still carrying that baggage from that first marriage. It's not the thing that happened to us, it's how we choose to react to it. And that is our choice. It may feel like it's instinct, it may feel like it just happens, it might feel like it's logical the way we're reacting, but it is our choice. And that's good news. Anytime something is our choice, we can change it. Anytime it's within our power, that's good news because we get to determine it at that point. There's a lot of things in life we don't control. A lot of things we don't control. And the things we don't control are things like, were we raised in a dysfunctional family? Did our spouse leave us? Maybe we contributed to that, but maybe we didn't. Maybe that was a character flaw on their part. Did we get disappointed in some way? Were we rejected in some way? Those things we can't necessarily control, but we can control our reaction to it. And that's where the good news comes in. When we take control of that and we determine consciously how we're going to react to that. And a good way to do that is to talk to a counselor, talk to a therapist, get a relationship coach, talk to a life coach, talk to a best friend, talk to family members you can trust, talk to people, work this thing out, get yourself a strategy, determine how you're going to handle this. And if you're going down a bad road, some of these people in your life can say, let's think about that. If you say things out loud like, I am never going to let somebody hurt me again, well, somebody who's kind of understanding where you are might say, how are you going to do that? How's that going to happen? What's your plan? Are you going to barricade yourself behind emotional walls so that you never connect with anyone again? Is that really what you're going for? Well, no, that's not what you're going for, but that's what happens. And we don't realize that's going to happen when we just do it instinctively, when we just do it as a reaction without thinking, when we talk it out with people, when we say these things out loud and we say, I'm never going to let somebody hurt me like this again. There's a good chance, especially if you're with a counselor, a professional, but even with a friend or a family member, a good chance they're going to say, what's your plan? You're going to barricade yourself from the world? You're going to run from people forever? You're never going to let anybody in again. You're never going to connect with anybody. You never want to have a really good, healthy relationship. When those things are said out loud and we make the decision in a way that we are really thinking about it, talking it out, getting feedback, and making a real decision. If we've come from a dysfunctional family, we've probably made some decisions that this is just how life is. This is just the way people act. Whenever we are raised in something, it begins to look normal. We assume that it is normal to be treated badly if we were treated badly as a child. We just assume that's the way the world is. Every child makes that assumption. But as we get into adulthood, we get to challenge that assumption. That's our choice. We can challenge the assumption. Is everyone like that? Is it that's just the way the world is? Or maybe that's the way my family was, and I need to deal with that. If we understand the choices we're making and understand that our reaction is our choice, what happened to us was not, we couldn't help that we're not to blame for that. Things happen in life. But if we react to them and choose how we react to them, that is our choice. We need to say it out loud, make our choices known, to ourselves and to people that care about us or to professionals that counsel us. We need to make those choices aloud. Once this man made his choice aloud, he said it out loud with a therapist and his wife, he could then make a different choice. He could then see that that choice that he made as a young college guy in the midst of humiliation and embarrassment was not a choice that was working for him anymore. It was not setting him on the course he wanted. He didn't want to lose his wife. He didn't want a divorce. He didn't want to be separated from his kids. But he had made choices that now could change because he had recognized that choice and it was his choice to make. And now he can make a new one. It's always good news to know that you made the choice because you get to make another one. It's not the past that affects us. It is our reaction to it. We are all going to have emotional scars. No one gets through this life without emotional scars. We're all going to get hurt along the way, but how we react to it makes all the difference. And so talk about it. Talk about it with people that care about you. Talk about it with a professional. Make the choices out loud and make sure they're choices that don't just protect you, but actually work for you in your life to get you to the place you want to be. And everybody is looking for those healthy relationships, building a life that matters, and healthy relationships that last. That's what I talk about in my book, Learning Love, Building a Life That Matters, and Healthy Relationships That Last. It's be available wherever books are sold in June of 2025 from Morgan James Publishing. I'm very excited about that. And pre-orders are available now. Prior to June of 25, pre-orders will be available. You can go to my website, markahicks.com, and you'll find easy links there. Barnes & Noble link is there. And let me just give you a little inside information. Barnes & Noble looks very carefully at pre-orders, particularly for first-time authors like me. And so if you're inclined to buy the book, if you're inclined to have this book to read, I would ask you a favor, ask you to pre-order. Barnes & Noble will look very carefully at that, and that will help ensure wider distribution and more publicity for the book, and you'll be helping to get this message out of how to build that life that matters and healthy relationships that last by learning the skill set of love. So please go to my website, markahicks.com, and go to the link of Barnes & Noble to pre-order your copy of Learning Love today. I appreciate your help.